In this video, we have some updates on the NHL likely expanding to the city of Seattle. We're going to discuss the updates coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So it's been a little while since we discussed the city of Seattle possibly getting the next NHL expansion franchise. We have some more information. There's been some news that's come out in the last few days, but I thought it was time that we do an update on how everything is looking with that process, kind of give everybody an update as to where things are at. As we know that the arena situation was basically in place with Key Arena set to be renovated to be able to accommodate an NHL franchise. I know the city of Seattle is also hoping to at one point at least bring back an NBA franchise as well. So obviously all the funds are in place for Key Arena to be renovated and update to hopefully make all that happen. So right now, obviously, all that's on hold because there's some other things that need to be taken care of first. Before construction can get underway for Key Arena, obviously, the city of Seattle and the ownership group have to come to an agreement on the lease agreement for the arena. That's a very key component here, and obviously that's going to probably not be finalized until the franchise has been awarded. So now the key date here to look out for, which isn't too far away, is June 20th. There's an NHL Board of Directors meeting in Las Vegas, which is going to be around the time of the NHL Awards. They have information to suggest that the Seattle franchise is on the itinerary to be discussed at that meeting. It is quite possible that the outcome of that meeting could be to grant a conditional franchise to the Seattle group. It would likely be later into the fall before all the conditions could be met and a franchise would be 100% officially awarded. But as of right now, June 20th is the big date to keep your eyes open for. For the Board of Directors meeting in Vegas could certainly end up having an announcement that Seattle has been conditionally awarded their 32nd franchise in the NHL. One key thing as well is I know the city of Seattle has been pretty keen on trying to bring back the NBA as well. I know they weren't real pleased with losing their NBA franchise. There's lots of basketball fans in the area. I'm sure the ownership group that's bringing in, they're trying to bring in the hockey team, certainly wouldn't mind having another tenant in Key Arena as well. But one thing that may be an issue here, at least as of right now, is that the way with the state of the renovations and all the plans, they may not be up to code to meet all the specifications of the NBA. I'm not sure if those things can be tweaked or changed at all to be able to meet that, so they can consider that down the road. But that might be something they might want to look at changing, or a hurdle they might want to try to overcome, because it did seem to be quite important as well at some point here in the future to try to bring an NBA team back to the city of Seattle as well. I'm not sure if that would be through relocation or expansion. Now, in regards to the NHL possibly expanding again, I know there's obviously some other cities that have been in discussions as well. Obviously, Quebec City's been in discussion for a long time, as well as Houston, Texas. The owner of the Houston Rockets recently made it known that he'd love to have an NHL franchise in the city of Houston. He already has the building, everything in place. They would just have to renovate it to accommodate hockey. Having a hockey team join the same building as the NBA team obviously would mean a lot more revenue for him and his company, and obviously would generate a lot more dates, with having games and events going on at the arena. So certainly something to keep in mind here. And we haven't really heard much talk about relocation. We did talk a lot about relocation back a few months back, but a lot of those talks have kind of gone to the wayside here. Obviously, at one point in time, the Carolina Hurricanes were a team that was discussed as a possible team to relocate, but now they're under new ownership, and Tom Dundon has committed to keeping the team in Carolina at least the short term, or probably, I believe it's at least 3 or 4 years before he's allowed to look at that. So it's not going to be anytime soon that the Hurricanes move, and that's assuming that obviously if things get turned around and start improving, well then they probably wouldn't move anyway. I know we also discussed the possibility of maybe the New York Islanders, but they seem to have their arena situation figured out, so that becomes less likely as well. I mean, obviously there's a couple Canadian teams that have obviously struggled to get new arenas in place. I know the Flames are working on it, as well as the Senators. So if things really fell through there, is it possible? Maybe they could move, but it seems highly unlikely. I know the league seems to be pretty committed to keeping their teams in place. Obviously, the Arizona Coyotes are a team that gets brought up time and time again about relocation, and maybe it'll happen at some point in time. But they also, they're the big one here, the big question mark that needs to get a long-term arena situation figured out, or they would be the most likely to move. If they ever do move, I could see them going to Houston before Quebec, mainly because the NHL would want to keep its conferences, evened out, and obviously Houston would be in the Western Conference as opposed to Quebec, so it would make things a lot easier that way. But I know Quebec has the building, they have an ownership group, they have pretty well everything rearing to go. They just need a team. Gary Bettman seems a little reluctant to go to the Canadian city. They've used the term small market a bunch of times, which doesn't really make sense to me in a way. I mean, I do understand you need to have a certain population, big area, of course, but you know, if it doesn't, regardless of the size of the city, if they're going to have season ticket sellouts and have committed to having great attendance, then what's the difference really? There's not a great deal of difference between Quebec City and some of the other smaller market teams in the NHL, so I can't see why they couldn't succeed. But it looks as though teams like Quebec and Houston are going to obviously have to wait a little while. But is it possible that we might see at some point the NHL expand to 34 teams? And could they then go to Houston and Quebec, add one extra team in the West, one extra team in the East? You know, is that a possibility? I know no other professional sports league right now in North America has gone to 34 teams. So there's a lot of debate out there that it would water down the talent pool too much, and you know, it might not be as competitive or as fun to watch for the fans. It might not be a wise move. But to be honest, I don't think the NHL really cares about that, and I'm also not convinced that it would be entirely true either. I mean, look at the Vegas Golden Knights coming in. If anything, they just added another competitive team that's, you know, shown that they can be very competitive and you know, potentially win the Stanley Cup right away. And it didn't really take away from the other teams. You know, parity in the league is at an all-time high. So really, I'm not convinced you couldn't add a couple more teams and that the level of competitiveness wouldn't drop any. So could we see that down the road? You just never know. You know, certainly a fun idea to think about. I know those two cities seem to be hungry for hockey, and I'd love to see it happen. I know Quebec's been waiting a long time, so hopefully they get their turn here at some point. So the big date here, just to summarize, June 20th, we might see conditional approval granted to the city of Seattle for their NHL franchise. So we'll do another update here later in June once those meetings take place and once we know more information. If you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31, likely soon to be 32 NHL teams here. So if you're new, please consider subscribing. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy the content as well. I'd really appreciate it if you did. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. We'll catch you next time.